Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Correct Opinion Zone, where all of our opinions are 100% verifiable fact. I am your host, Jack, and this is my co-host, Dalen. Today, we're going to be talking about witchcraft and evil.
What? Quite the opposite, actually. That's what we want. That's what they want you to think.
Yeah.
But in reality, we are talking about the religious, spiritual, philosophical practice of Wicca.
Interesting.
It's not technically like an organized religion, but it is considered a religion because it is a neo-paganistic religion.
Interesting.
Which basically, it's like a new form, a modern form of paganism. Because paganism, should we define that for people? Do y'all know what?
I think we should. I just want to say before we start, so in the last podcast, we've been covering like the major religions of the world. Now that we got that out of the way, other than Judaism, we still need to do Judaism. But now that we got that out of the way, we're going to be talking about more kind of like obscure things. Interesting, different things. So it's going to be less conservative, conventional.
Yeah, so
that's good. So, what's the word? Paganism. What is paganism?
Well, basically, paganism is a really broad term for. I feel like I'm talking like I'm such an expert, but I'm not. I just want to give a preface. We're like very loosely prepared for this, but it's just fun. We're trying to have a interesting, deep conversation about different belief systems. So don't judge us for not being history professors. But here we go. Anyways, paganism is like any form of religious practice that predated they say predated Christianity, but it's also I guess you could say that because it was kind of the Christians that invented the word pagan. The word pagan kind of loosely apparently translates as like people from the country, like people, and it's like what the colonists would think, like the savages and stuff like that. And so a lot of people hear pagan and they think it's like this sketchy, like, you know, magic druid circle of like all this stuff, but it's technically, you know, you could say like indigenous people in America were like pagans, you know, technically, like that form of spirituality or whatever.
I mean, one of the biggest parts of the like satanic Bible is they believe. So if you haven't seen our last episode, we did an episode on Satanism, and so that's why we're talking about this. But they believed that the pagan gods were actually good, obviously, and a lot of people think of them as like evil gods and things like that. And so like the god Pan was a pagan god that looked like a goat. And but the thing is, like, paganism, even many indigenous cultures around the world, their form of spirituality was very earth-based and kind of a nature form of worship where they had extreme reverence for the earth, you know, Mother Earth, and really respect for all living things. And that's why a lot of their deities were very nature-based, and because they represented the earth. And so Pan, or the horned god, is one of the main gods for Wicca practice. But yeah, he's like the god of the wild, fertility, the earth. He was not in any way of any sort of evil anything. Even Pan actually is also in Greek mythology also, and he's the god of the wild. He's like a satyr. He's like part goat. He has horns. And so that's why, you know, we've talked about how a bunch of Christian missionaries showed up. And that's why Satan is often depicted as a goat. Yeah. That's where that came from.
Which, I mean, you know, if these really self-righteous like Christian missionaries showed up and they saw people dancing around a fire in a circle with a deity with horns, they might think it's kind of creepy because it was just different to them. And so they viewed it as like, oh, this is evil, this is of Satan, and oh, like, look at that. And that's how we have the modern day version of Satan being this horned goat, like, you know, goat imagery of this evil demon creature that is the devil or whatever. Yeah. But that's just because it was a religion that was different, that they demonized, that Christianity demonized. Yeah. When in reality, they were an extremely peaceful religion, especially Wicca primarily is coming from like a lot of Celtic tradition and like, you know, what's the word? The UK, like that area of those pagan people there that has like a really big influence. But there are different types of pagans as well. There's like Alexandrian and I don't know the different forms, but there's many different tribes and kind of tribes that they call groves. Which are different kind of just sects of paganism, or they have actual covens in paganism where people that believe that they are witches, you know, practicing witches, like that's like their coven of where they meet to discuss and practice magic.
So
Yeah, so I watched a video of a Wiccan girl that considers herself to be
red
part
hair.
of
Does
the
she have red
Wiccan.
hair?
You saw the same video?
What's her name? I love her. She's so pretty.
Yeah. Well, anyway, she's so witchcraft is a part of Wiccan, but that doesn't mean that every Wiccan does witchcraft.
Well, and witchcraft, there's a difference between witchcraft and Wicca as well, which everyone thinks is the same. But witchcraft itself, we put a negative connotation on it because we think witch is a negative word, which is just another word that was put to label people that had nature-based religion and spirituality. And so, like, witchcraft, witch allegedly translates as, like, wise one. So actually the word witch is not like a negative thing, but so witchcraft is just, it's the craft, it's the practice of that. Just like how if you're an artist, like your craft is doing that art, you know?
Yeah.
So witchcraft is just their way, their practice, the art of their way of life. It's not an evil thing. It's not supposed to be an evil thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Sorry, I'm just messing with your mic because I'm trying to make it sound
is it too
good.
loud?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it. All right,
Okay.
I think that's good. So I'll be honest, like Wicca, I did do a lot of research, but I feel like I know hardly anything about it.
That's what we were both saying, is because I, read about it for like kind of several, like a while, and I watched many videos and listened to many podcasts trying to research it, because it's kind of just this whole universe of teachings and
there's so much
and there's so much
different
variation.
things.
Yeah, because everything I'm reading about, it's like some theorists say that this is this and that also this means this, but not every Wiccan does this, but some do this and some don't do this, and some think that's wrong, but some do that, and it's very just like, what's the word? It's not like concrete in any way. It's a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was trying to find, like, what is their doctrine? They don't have one leader. They have their founder was this man by the...
They have a...
Gardner was one, and it was in, like, the 40s and 50s. Gardner and Doreen Valiente. They published books about, like, a lot of these ancient philosophies and modern things that they've kind of developed about Wicca, and they're kind of seen as the founding people of Wicca. So it is a pretty modern thing. It's, like, 40s and 50s that it was actually referred to as Wicca. And of making more of of bringing paganism back to the modern day, basically, because it was kind of just erased in a lot of ways. But they don't have like one specific sacred book or text that they refer to. They have their one kind of universal law is, I don't want to like misquote it, but it's basically like, if it do as you wilt, if it harms none, do as you wilt. Do as thou will, or whatever like that. Yeah. Which, I mean, is great. So, I mean, but with that, they're much more liberal as kind of a religion, as a form of spirituality, because, almost all religions in the world have very strict views on certain things that aren't necessarily like morally a bad thing, like things like sex or substances or different things that are seen as evil and wrong. But if you really think about it, partaking in that or doing something, if it's a consensual thing, it's hurting no one, it's not really a bad thing, it's not harmful to anyone. And so that's what they believe. So they're very open in terms of sexuality, they're very open in terms of substance. It's basically just like, if you're not harming anyone or yourself, like, walk that line and figure out that for yourself.
Yeah.
And find that balance yourself, which I like that. That's kind of how I view life. So
one thing that's like Satanism, they do magic as well.
But
like
they have like harmful magic.
Yeah. So like in the Satan, like you can do rituals like to destroy your enemies.
Yeah, it's sketch.
You can do rituals to
summon a mate. Apparently.
Yeah, to like get someone to please you sexually.
Like
things that are harmful to people, but the Wiccans, they do witchcraft. Do they do? Is there Wiccans that do harmful magic?
I mean, well, from what I've read about it, that no Wiccan, none of the people, because I've listened to like people talking that are Wiccan like priestesses, and no Wiccan wants to make like concrete claims about Wicca, because it's not this like concrete religion with this like set rules really. So none of them want to say that no Wiccans are evil. Obviously there are people that probably misuse it, or that are kind of misguided in it, or kind of go against the philosophies that were intended.
But yeah, I definitely think there are people that might use the methods to be harmful, but I feel like that's more leaning more into towards like kind of Satanism if they are doing that. Because the whole Wiccan philosophy is if it harms none. So if you're like using magic to harm people, it's not in line with Wicca belief.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the one foundational belief of Wicca, that is to harm no one. So yeah, I feel like that would just be corrupt Wicca practice, you know? Wiccan practice. I don't know how to refer to that, sorry.
I think
Wiccan practice. But yeah, did you want to go the direction or?
Yeah, I don't. Like I said, I spent hours studying, and when I studied Buddhism, I could talk for hours about Buddhism. When I studied Satanism, I could do like 3 more episodes about Satanism.
Yeah. Well, it's because, and there's
for some reason,
very specific established things because it is more organized. And I think that's why, you know, a lot of people criticize organized religion and that it's this harmful thing that's used to control people, which I definitely see that as valid in many ways. But also, Wicca is so like, this is my opinion. I'm not trying to like offend anyone, but like it's so unorganized and so open, and I like that in many ways, but also it just leaves so much room for people to just interpret everything as they may, you know? Because I've met so many people that are like, oh, I'm a Wiccan and I do this and this and that, and I'm just like, oh, like is that like where is that in your belief system? You're like, oh, well, I just feel like this energy, like I felt drawn to this, so I do this, and I'm like, okay, like it's just people kind of invent their own spiritual practice from Wicca based things. But as far as kind of foundational beliefs, though, there are some interesting things, because what I really like about indigenous spirituality all around the world, predating Christianity, you know, we always had Hinduism was like ancient, was always like in India and the East. But as far as the Americas, as far as Africa and, you know, all of the island nations around the world, Australia, even in Europe and like before Christianity, they were paganistic. They were very nature-based, like I was saying before. But they believed in something that is totally different to what modern religion usually views, which is they believed in, like, female divinity, you know? And they regarded, like, the earth as, like, Mother Earth. And that was, like, many people believed, like, in Gaia, like, Mother Earth, like, the creator, everything is coming from her, which kind of is so interesting because now almost all people, even if they're not religious, if we talk about God, we're talking about him a man. Like, we're referring to him as a he. But before that, I feel like it really makes sense to view the creator as female because women give life. Like, women birth life, you know? I feel like
we were actually talking about this early today.
It's not Father Earth. It was Mother Earth. Like, that makes sense to me that they viewed it as that. And I think that's really cool. And that was... because that totally changes... we've talked about this before, but that would totally change people's perspective on life. If the highest, most divine being was female... I think our respect for women as a culture would be really different, you know? And not to criticize that it's not bad to believe in a male god or deity, but it's like, I just think that...
it might be different is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, and even a lot of tribes, you know, I'm sure there was a lot of misogyny in that as well, but there was like more matriarchies in indigenous cultures where, you know, people were given the name of the mother. It was like the mother's lineage, or it was like female... like shamans and stuff like that were like the regarded like spiritual teachers in the tribes and stuff like that. And actually, you know, I was learning about Wicca. I was reading about how, you know, a lot of these legends about witches and myths and derive from indigenous people because, you know, they were hunters and gatherers, you know, so men were hunters and they were out hunting animals for food, while the women stayed and they built houses and they were taking care of the children. They were cooking and they were the ones gathering herbs and learning about the different plants and medicinal plants. And so actually the first people to practice ancient medicine, or to even know about it, to learn about it, to discover it, were women.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thought to think about because, you know, they were the nurturers, they were the healers, they were the ones that knew about all the plants, and that's what tribes use. They didn't have other things. They used medicinal plant, like, oh, you have a headache, like chew on some willow bark, like stuff like that, you know. And they had total natural remedies. And then, you know, when whatever Christian or more modern or like Western civilizations came and conquered these pagan areas, they saw these women and they saw their practices and they saw it as different. They saw it as evil. They saw it as women shouldn't be doing these type of things, and they made up. And they demonized it, saying like, oh, look at them with their evil potions and all of these things, and like, oh, their cauldron, and like, oh, they just invented all these myths about and labeling them as witches.
During like the witch trials, were men ever involved in that, like being killed?
I don't think hardly.
I know that like
hardly
some
ever.
dogs were killed.
It was almost always women though, and they say it's a lot of people say it's not accurate, but it's common belief amongst a lot of people that 9 million people were murdered. Like innocent people were murdered.
That seems pretty high. 9
I
million.
think so, but that's why people.
People
compare it to they compare it to being a Holocaust on women.
But 6 million people were killed
in the Holocaust.
Jewish people.
But even if
I find it hard to believe that 9.
It was at least in the hundreds of thousands or millions of people that were just murdered because of Christianity. Which I mean, it's not at all the teachings of Christ. Like I'm not blaming Christ as like someone to believe it, but it's just like the structure of how the church was very corrupt, and it instilled fear in people, and it wanted to have control, and it wanted to be more powerful and they treated people that had different beliefs as the enemy, and they wanted their followers to believe they were the enemy. So they instilled fear in them by saying like they're evil Satan worshippers, and like, oh, they're witches, they're gonna steal your children, and all this stuff that just demonized innocent people that had just nature-based practice and different spiritual beliefs in them, which is really sad because they had such respect for like life and the earth, and even Native Americans had so much belief and respect for, they believed like soul, like the soul, like spirit was in everything, and any animal they killed, they used every part of the animal, and they thanked it, and they only took what they needed. They was never in excess, and it was a much more balanced existence. But sorry, a lot of this philosophy goes into Wicca. And so Wicca is a very like feminist religion.
Yeah.
They have priestesses, and it's because they kind of view themselves as like, the witches that survived. Like a lot of them actually kind of see themselves kind of how Holocaust survivors, or like
speak more into the mic.
Or people that are descended from people that were in the Holocaust. A lot of Wiccans kind of see that as, like, we're the witches they couldn't burn. Like, our traditions have survived, our way of life, our beliefs, like, couldn't be killed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of, like, feminist female empowerment in that. And especially in the aspect that it's one of the only practices that still is going on today where people regard female divinity. But they don't just believe, like we talked about Pan as well, but I was reading that, they really believe in just so much balance. So they believe in, like, their religion has a lot of duality, is what they say. So they have both God and goddess, which I think is really cool. So it's not just, Mother Earth. It's not just Heavenly Father, white male God or whatever. It's like they have a God and a goddess, which makes sense, because if that was supposed to be creation, like, of course we would come from both, from like a religious standpoint. But yeah, their kind of male divinity is Pan, and then their goddess is a lot of times like a Mother Earth, nature, or moon goddess is what they like believe in. And so I just think that's really interesting because it's the balance between both that masculine and feminine, and they view it as a very yin and yang balance. So yeah.
So we actually have a guest coming in probably this time this week. She does tarot card readings. How does really tarot go into these beliefs?
Basically, like I said, like Wicca is just this whole like universe of different practices and different things that you don't necessarily have to do to be a Wiccan, that not every Wiccan even approves of or knows about, but like things like a lot of Wiccans are very into using crystals and like energy work and tarot cards and aura like cleansing and stuff like that. So a lot of the kind of new age kind of woo-woo stuff that we think of, actually a lot of Wiccans practice, or things like rune stones, like symbology, things like they also, a lot of Wiccans, sorry, this is kind of a sidetrack, but a lot of Wiccans use something that's called like a Book of Shadows. Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's
like the founder of Wicca like had a Book of Shadows that they wrote a lot of their like, they'll write like spells in it or how spells went, how it affected them, and it's like it's basically like a spiritual journal of the things they learn on their Wiccan journey of their spiritual like realizations and stuff like that. And devout like Wiccans like keep this, and they call it a Book of Shadows, and it's like very personal, and they like don't share it with anyone, and it's supposed to just be there's even like protective spells that they'll write in them to like keep people from reading it and stuff like that. And so a lot of people keep a Book of Shadows.
Tarot is another thing that's really been demonized because, you know, you see on TV, like Supernatural or something, there'll be some demon that's like, pick a card. It's like, but tarot is not even, people think it's fortune telling and that's this evil satanic thing. And it's not at all. Like, I'm always shocked by how many people I meet. Maybe I'll tell them like, oh, I got a tarot reading done. And they're like, you do tarot? Like, why would you do that? And I'm like, it's literally not an evil thing at all. There's tons of different types of tarot decks. And I mean, there is a traditional, like, older, kind of more ancient one that is the traditional one, but they're basically just full of just guidance and wisdom and insight into your life and your journey to help you. Like, I literally did it today. I went to this kind of infinite possibilities kind of hippie festival is what it's called, and it was really cool. My mom actually got like a cool reading thing done, and there were these angel cards. They're called angel cards, and I just think it's funny that but I was just looking through a lot of the decks, and I did it for myself. And, you know, it's like each one might be about speaking your truth. And then they'll have some sort of illustration that symbolizes that. Maybe they're like chakra tarot cards. So like if it's saying speak your truth, maybe it's for the throat chakra, or it's stuff like that. There's always a lot of symbology in it. Or it'll be like a Mother Earth card, and it's about being grounded and about connecting with nature and about connecting. It's always about these things that every time I've done it really apply to my life, where it's almost kind of crazy. Sometimes I've done it that it literally will address like every single specific anxiety or thought I've been having recently, and it'll address like all of those things. Or when I've been struggling about making a decision of where to go to college or what to do next, or like how to do this thing or pay for this thing, and I'll get things that'll say like, you know, pursue like your dreams, like don't worry about money, like focus on like what's most important, or like focus on being happy in this moment, stop stressing about the future, like things that are like really specific. Or I mean, it's hard to explain because it's always such a personal thing, but always, every time I've done it, it's been very just valuable and insightful. Kind of like how you might read a sacred book to gain some insight, you know? It's like, because tarot cards are very sacred to people as well. And the kind of rule of thumb for tarot, for your first deck, if you want to own a deck, you're not supposed to go out and buy one for yourself. It's supposed to like come into your life through some way. So it's either supposed to be like gifted to you, or you like discover it somewhere. It's supposed to just kind of like come into your life. So I'm waiting to get my tarot cards. So someone please buy me some, because apparently I can't buy them for myself, but I really want some. So I just kidding.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, it's like a whole tarot is like, it's just one little aspect that some Wiccans use, but it's a whole other just kind of thing on its own, because people go and they spend a lot of time like looking and, oh, did it stop?
Yeah.
But a lot of people go and they try to like sense and feel the energy of like which deck like speaks to them, or which one like applies most to their life. There's medicine cards, there's like nature-based cards, there's like spirit animal cards, there's all these different types of cards, and they're all harmless. Like they're all just these beautiful kind of spiritual just insights on life. And I really don't get how people think it's a satanic thing when it's literally fully there's literally angel cards, where it's like on the cards it'll have like Jesus and Michael, like stuff like that. That it's there's all different types of cards.
So the reason we're even talking about this, one, just because it's part of Wicca, but we actually have a guest that has agreed to come onto the podcast. She wasn't able to come today, so this is actually going to be a 2-part episode. The next part of the episode will probably come out like sometime in the middle of the week. Mm-hmm. But we're actually going to. I've never done tarot, so I'm going to get a reading, and then Dalen's going to get a reading as well.
Yeah, it's... and like I said, like I didn't believe... The first time I did it, actually, is kind of funny. There's this place called Evermore Park that's like this fantasy kind of park place where they all dress up as like... they're like these amazing actors that dress up in all these characters, and there was like a gypsy caravan. I guess gypsy. Some people are offended by the word, but it was like a Romanian caravan, and there was like this... this like gypsy woman, and she was doing tarot, and that was the first time I ever did it. And she seemed so real, like she had the accent and everything, but she read my tarot, and it was like at a really crucial time in my life where I was really struggling about some decisions I needed to make, and I was feeling really depressed about a lot of things, and I was really confused. And I kid you not, like she literally talked specifically about like she was like, you're about to go on a journey to like a far off country where you're going to like do, and like just described my life to a T, like And I wasn't even the projecting, like, if anything, I was trying not to believe it. I was like, okay, whatever, like, this will be a fun little Halloween thing. But then she did it, and I was like, I couldn't believe that, because that she just fully accurately told me everything. But that's why they're guidance cards. They're called oracle cards oftentimes. And so people in Wicca use it because they believe in connecting to energy and connecting to, that there's meaning in, like, in the patterns of life and everything, and in nature. And, like, it's a way of reading into those kind of vibrations and frequencies. It's like a tool to be able to kind of see into that. And I think people genuinely have gifts to be able to do tarot, because I've had other people do it for me, and it's kind of like, oh, I just really feel like you just need to, like, embrace love. Like, just, like, I don't know, like, random crap. They'll just go in some spiel. But I've had other people do it for me. And my friend Brooklyn, who's going to be coming on the podcast, is, like, really amazing at it. Like, I think she's done it for me twice now. And it's always like, how do you know? Like, how do you know what I'm thinking?
I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's really cool. But you have to go in with, like, an open mind and just kind of set your intention. And yeah. But yeah, it's really interesting. But another thing about Wicca is they have, because they're so nature-based, they have many gatherings they have many different holidays. I don't know all of them. I feel bad. I mean, I could read them too, but I'd rather just talk about it. But because they believe life is all about cycles, and so that's why the moon is such an important aspect. Like, they meet, I think, every month on the full moon. Like, Wiccans will get together for practice to practice their ceremonies and stuff like that. They have.
It kind of seems. Yeah. I mean, I can see why people think that's creepy, like getting together on the full moon. It just seems
different to me. It sounds cool and, like, mysterious.
Yeah.
But I could see to, like, Christians in their chapel thinking, like, oh, these people meeting in the woods at night, like, they think it's creepy, because it's different. And but so they have a lot of things related to the moon, because the moon comes in phases. It's about birth and renewal and things like that.
Do they have a holiday
called Yule? They have a lot of their holidays. A lot of our holidays now come from paganistic holidays.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, okay, so, like, there's summer solstice where they meet. There's, like, Halloween comes from paganistic practice. I don't know. I wish you know the names of them. But even Easter, I can't explain it because I don't know the story. But, like, Easter comes from one of their spring celebrations. It's actually, like, in February, but, like, the word that they use, like, our word for Easter comes from the pagan word that they used for their holiday celebrating spring and the time when spring was about to begin and the renewal, because Christianity
I think, like, even Christmas is about, like, if you're celebrating it in the religious sense, it's about Jesus, but the time of year is because of the pagan
it's
winter,
about the sun,
whatever,
and it's about the sun coming back, about the light coming back, because even it's like pagans, unknowing to them at the time, they almost symbolically believed in Christ's symbol, which is that, like, the light would die and would rise again after, like, this specific amount of time. And so that's why a lot of their practice has to go into, like, I can't remember, but, like, on the darkest day of the year, like, they have, like, a celebration because it's like, oh, the light is about to come back. And so it's almost like they're celebrating that symbology of Christ, of, like, him returning. Because that's what...
that's why we do Easter at the time we do Easter,
Because Christmas, we know Christ was not born on December 25th. He was born in springtime.
As far as we know,
April 6th, according to, But, but a lot of... I wish I could explain it better, but a lot of our modern practices, Christian practices, actually come from, like, paganistic things, which is just really interesting. Because I believe they were a very spiritually in tune people. They just didn't have such a regimented... They didn't have religion controlling or governing their societies, it was more a philosophy, a way of just living and respecting other living things and creatures. And actually a lot of Wiccans, I mean, kind of a stereotype is that a lot of them are vegetarian and even vegan. It's because they don't believe in harming anything.
And that's just because of, they don't believe in harming nature.
Everyone, but yeah, they're just they have a very peaceful philosophy. And I feel like I keep comparing it to just indigenous cultures all around, but that's where they draw a lot of their belief system. But there's so much value in having such respect for the earth and for Mother Earth. And I especially like that they are one of the only religions that, they have their female, they acknowledge both male and female divinity, and that there needs to be that balance. And yeah.
So, since this is a 2-part podcast, it's only going to be a 30-minute podcast, which is half the amount of time we do normally. Okay. So, remember, come back. It'll probably be out Wednesday when we do our tarot card reading.
I have a couple more things I could talk about, though, actually.
Yeah, but...
I don't want to right now.
Since it's a 2-part, we'll save that.
Oh, okay.
And then also, we have a Patreon exclusive podcast coming out.
Oh.
I'm doing a collab with the Rice Orb podcast.
What the heck is
and we're going to go over some of the rituals in the Satanic Bible.
Oh my gosh.
Dalen is not going to be there for that one because he doesn't want to talk about Satanism anymore. But that's why I invited the members of the Rice Orb podcast to come on. So if you are interested in watching that, you can go check that out on our Patreon account. If you donate, you can donate $1 and you'll be able to see it. So that's there if you're interested in that. Also, once again, we're on Spotify, YouTube, and all this. I feel like I said almost nothing in this episode.
Sorry.
But that's my own fault. I feel like I didn't know much about Wicca, but... hopefully next time I'll be doing better, and I don't know what we'll be talking about next week. I guess we'll have to figure that out.
I actually am remembering so many things to talk about right now. Not gonna lie.
Well,
should I save it or should I let it
save
out
it?
now?
Save it.
Save it.
Goodbye.
What the heck?